Do you know the origin of con man? Where that word comes from? It comes from confidence man or woman. Did you know that? Have
Yes,
you ever
that is
been?
a great point there, Moreno.
Yes. And have you ever been caught up in a confidence game? And I ask you specifically, Deborah, because you have been involved at one point in your life with Interpol.
Yes. When I worked as an immigration investigator, I worked with Interpol and I ended up capturing one of Interpol's most wanted men in Germany, which he was involved. He was an organized crime member involving changing VIN numbers on vehicles and transporting them across state lines. But over the years of working in law enforcement, I've also been involved in human smuggling, organized crime, money laundering, proceeds of crime, and working with cases that dealt specifically with that.
This is a perfect theme, a perfect topic. You have so much experience. I'm sure we are going to learn a lot about it. This is all about the confidence game. And, it's an attempt to win the trust and confidence of a victim, which is known as the mark, and defraud them. And really, we've always been talking about the con man, but what about the con woman? I think they are equal. And, they are untrustworthy. Their ability is to gain the trust of victims. They play on people's, you see, they know that they can play on people's selfish desires, their greed, their need to obtain as much as they can with minimal effort. And victims often don't report con men and women because they're embarrassed that they've been tricked. So this is in the con man or woman's favor.
Yeah, that element of the shame and the guilt around that is huge, and that sense of real embarrassment in the process. And I mean, it's not just. I love this topic because it's not just being conned in business; it's being conned in life and being taken advantage of. It is something that a lot of people, most people, have experienced in one point or another in their life, and it can have a real devastating effect as to how we make decisions moving forward.
You're so right. It's all these tentacles into our emotions that drive us, affect us. And today, specifically, when we're talking about a confidence game, we are really looking at the marketing plan. We know that a marketing plan is an attempt to win the trust and confidence of a target, in our case, known as the prospect, to sell them. And the captain of the marketing plan is the con marketer, the confidence marketer. You know, the con marketers, first of all, they do not like to be found, discovered. In other words, discovered to be fraudsters. They want to come across as legitimate. They dress for success. Well, you and I, Deborah, we dress for success. However, we don't go over the top. For example, we don't show up with a glittering, shiny suit. And con marketers also often push poorly understood products. They are overcomplicated. And the last point I have here is that con marketers bring out the worst in you. Have you noticed that? They say that if you don't do this, then you will continue experiencing these bad results. So do something about it and buy our product so that you can feel better and stop feeling sorry for yourself, etc., etc., etc.
You know what? You make a really interesting point there, Moreno. And I mean, when we're talking about the sales process, when you're sitting down and talking to somebody and assessing what are their needs, what are their problems, what are their challenges, what are they experiencing because of those problems and challenges, and that is a natural part of the sales process. So I want people to understand that when just because those questions are asked, that is not the red flag that you're being conned. It is really to get a better understanding. And it could very well be the truth that if you don't make some changes and you don't make some important decisions to move you in forward in a positive direction, what's happening in your life, what's happening in your business in terms of the challenges and the problems will continue to exist. So we know that certain changes have to be made. So that, asking that question, where they're appealing to your emotions, you want to continue feeling that way, because if you don't, we need to make some changes. What it is that you have to offer as a business owner in terms of a solution, that is simply one option for them. So there may be, I always believe there's more than one way to solve a problem. But certainly if people get caught up in going, wow, you know what, they're appealing to my emotions here, and so that is a red flag for a con man, I want to caution people that's not always the case. They're just getting a better understanding of how this problem is affecting them, and if they are in fact ready to make a change which is positive. So it is a tactic that could be overused by a con person, but that is not what the typical sales process is all about.
Very good points, Deborah. Never be, um, don't show despair. And it's important to be confident, know what our goal is, and never ever give up. Otherwise, the con marketer will take advantage of us. The con marketer is dubious. They work at quickly gaining our trust. They play on people's needs and pains to obtain their trust with minimal effort. Customers, which were once prospects, often don't report scams because they incorrectly believe that they themselves were or are unable implementing the marketing product that they purchased, that they failed due to their own incompetence, although it may be sometimes true. Who is the greatest con man of all time? As I mentioned, it's Bernie Madoff. While Charles Ponzi, an Italian, was credited as being the inventor of the Ponzi scheme, Bernie Madoff executed the largest Ponzi scheme in history, which lasted decades. I think he defrauded people of something in the region of $50 billion. Now, what is important is to find ways to spot con artists, in our case, con marketers, and what to do with them when we see them. We think that, or many people think that we can't be conned, but most of us can if the con marketer is giving us something that we want. It happens to all of us. There are telltale communication styles of con artists. And the first one that I have here is that they have oversized egos. They are extroverts. So we need to look out for these people. Another one is they have intense eye contact. They glare at you. This happens mostly offline. I'm just wondering, Deborah, if there's a parallel online, if we can spot that online. What do you think?
The online process is, people have more control in that, because there is the control aspect is that you could simply click off, and you're off the Zoom, or you're off the Microsoft Teams. You've shut off FaceTime and closed it down. It's different when you're in person, because you can't immediately get away from the person or end the conversation without some awkward kind of dialogue in the process. So I think you have to be very confident at the idea of what it is that you want to say in the process. If you want to say no in the process, if you want to know it's not the right time. And a lot of that is around the questioning that comes into play. So if you know that something is over the top in that moment, an offer that is presented to you that you go, this is exactly what I need. It's a no-brainer. I want to be able to do it. It's good value. You can step into it. The issue is whatever we step into, whatever we purchase, even when we go to the local grocery store, we're buying goods or food, you buy something with an expectation that it's going to meet your standards and how you interpret of this item when I cook it up or when I use it, open the can, open the jar, open the box. It's going to function the way that I anticipate it to function, or taste the way it's supposed to taste. However, we could be disappointed. We could end up with a dud. You could buy a brand new car and have it under warranty, but it could be a dud of a car and not function properly. The idea is anytime you're purchasing something, anytime you make an investment, you are taking a risk. And the idea here is, are you prepared to lose in this risk thing? Because if you have a company that guarantees either a money back guarantee or they'll continue to work with you until you get certain results, that is what you really want to look for. Is it easy to get your money back, your investment back? Have you done the work? Have you followed through? Are you using the product in the right way? If you are meeting the standards and the expectations, it's reasonable to assume that you're going to get a refund or that you're going to get a replacement item and it's going to work, it's going to function. You will have the satisfaction that you were anticipating with the product.
Very good points, Deborah. What you're suggesting is that people need to listen and pay attention and think about what they see and hear. And it ties in very well into this next point, that con marketers have the ability of spinning a good yarn. They can tell a good story, a story that is not true, often interesting and imaginative, and they recycle it again and again. So when we listen to them, we need to pay attention to these very important details and think about it, not just flow with our emotions. Also, as these marketers spin their stories, we know that they are very smooth. They don't break a sweat.
It's interesting that you talk about, that in particular. So, I mean, we're talking about the con artist comes from the place of an intention right off from the very beginning to take advantage of somebody else's goodwill or their trusting nature. So they don't come into the relationship with the intention of adding value into the relationship and giving first. They are coming in to make people feel better in the initial stages. They may give a little bit, but their intention is to take a lot. So, while you share this information, Moreno, I need you to know that, and I want the audience to know, you can do your due diligence. You could do all the best work in advance of trying to protect yourself, and yet you could still be taken. And I had a fairly interesting background that allowed me to be typically more, I wouldn't say suspicious, but more discerning than the average person. And yet I've been taken advantage of in the process. And I would think that most people have been taken advantage of in one way or another. So the idea of the due diligence process of trying to do your homework, I was involved in a situation where I was offered a very hefty opportunity to come into, when I say hefty, which was a significant financial investment, into a licensing agreement. So I reviewed the contract in depth. I had a business lawyer review the contract in depth. I was trained in business law, so I knew what to look for and asked the appropriate questions and got the answers. But I also did my due diligence in terms of sitting down and talking to this person who was offering it, who was the owner of the product. But I also talked to clients in person, either over the phone or in person, people that I knew had known for at least 10 or 15 or 20 years, and said, you're using the product, what kinds of results are you getting, and asking a number of questions. And then in addition, other individuals who were involved in the licensing agreement, I went and talked to a number of people as well and said, what is your experience? What's happening with this? Are you getting good results with this? And I felt in my own heart I was doing the right due diligence. However, what came out of that after signing the contract and getting involved in it, about 2-3 months later, there was evidence that had come about through another party, another consultant who had done even more research. And they had found that basically it had come down to fraudulent misrepresentation. The person had misrepresented what was being offered. And then comes the point of how do you get your money back? And how do you go forward and connect with this person? And my process was not to trash the person, was not to ruin their reputation, because their intention was to build up their company, which was $1 million plus healthy seven-figure company. I wasn't interested in destroying that. I saw no benefit in destroying that. Or ruining somebody's life in the process. I turned around and had a conversation that was a civil conversation. I presented them with opportunities where they could change it and correct what was considered fraudulent misrepresentation to turn it around into something positive, and gave them an opportunity to do that. At the same time, that fraudulent misrepresentation rendered the contract that I had with that individual null and void, based on when I said this is now a null and void contract. So at the end of the day, it was, do I get my money back or not? So I was probably one of the few people that got their money back, because it was the way that I had the conversation with the person to create no harm. That is a rare thing that happens. A lot of times people have to go to court and get their money back. But I can tell you that the whole idea of being defrauded, being taken advantage, takes a real hit on your mental and emotional well-being. And you do feel like, I'm a failure, I'm an idiot, why did I get taken advantage of? And then we go into this cycle of self-sabotage. We were sabotaged by somebody, and now we start to self-sabotage. And it creates a real problem when every interaction in business requires that we build healthy relationships with people. When all of a sudden we've been taken advantage of, now our radar is coming up. Okay, I misjudged this person. Now, does that mean that I can trust myself when I'm interacting with each and every other person that I need to interact with? And so we become hyper alert, hyper aware. We make unresourceful decisions, and we have limiting beliefs and limiting decisions that come from that. And we start the process of very subtly sabotaging all the relationships around us. It has a definite spiral effect, for sure.
You were conned, and the best is that you approached it the right way. I think that it is inevitable that everyone at one point or another will get conned. It's part of living. It's like starting a business. If those people who have successfully started and are running a business have all made mistakes. Mistakes is part of the learning process. Those who don't make mistakes have achieved nothing. And it's the same with being conned, that at one point or another, we will get conned. It's part of becoming streetwise, business-wise. It's inevitable. We need to be aware of these incidents and know how to behave, accept them, and as we go along, we will become stronger. We will become better at dealing with these situations. I have some points here that
Sure.
we can use for counterattacks. Deborah, you want to say something?
Yeah, no, definitely carry on, and then I'll share a few other points there.
The first is to resist the temptation to dismiss unusual behavior as mere eccentricities or idiosyncrasies. These red flags need to be taken note of. Don't make excuses for these red flags. Think about it. Don't immediately jump to defending a person just because you like them, and you have already purchased their product, because that is how they win. And when we meet someone that we like, who's offering us something that we want, and we don't know that it's fake, then we naturally want to defend them. We need to be aware of these situations and be more confident in what we are feeling, what we are believing. Trust the red flags that we identify. Don't just brush them off. And most important is to do due diligence, as Deborah just said. Check out anyone or any company that you're considering doing business with using independent third parties. It is quite easy to fake reviews. We need to pay attention which reviews we are watching, listening to. At the moment, the most trustworthy reviews are video testimonials, because they're a lot more difficult to forge. One can read between the lines, one can see how legitimate or not a video review, a video testimonial is. And the last point I have here is that a skilled artist will use every tool at his or her disposal to get you to act on your emotions instead of cold, hard analysis. So never overlook the cold, hard analysis that you need to perform. And don't let your emotions get the better of you. Deborah.
Those are all really good points. And the fraud aspect of being taken advantage of happens at all different levels of business. It happens from a marketing standpoint when we are involved in a process of having to purchase a product or a service. But it also happens within a company, because you could have staff members, team members that are stealing from the company, defrauding the company. I've also had really close interactions with a colleague where she had hired a CEO in her company, and she had given up sort of the control and the close watch over funds in her company. And he ended up defrauding her of, good, healthy six figures, which resulted in her having to shut her business down. And those are the other things of what do you know in terms of a business owner? Are you really watching and understanding the finances? Do you know how to read the finances and understand what's going on in the books in the company, and knowing what is happening there? So you must be able to read the spreadsheet. You've got to really know what's going on in what your accountant, what your bookkeeper is processing, and knowing what those numbers are. So the instincts, trusting your instincts, is a huge thing. And the other thing too is, because we may have already had incidents or events happen in our past where we've had some negative emotions attached to that, and we create a limiting belief from that, and then from there we create limiting decisions. So this is where we end up being sabotaged, or we end up self-sabotaging, because of how we interpret the meaning of an event that has taken place, or a series of events that have taken place in our past. So the idea is, how do we get control over that? With our brain, essentially. And the brain is really important. Number one, that we know how to be discerning, which is, like you had alluded to this, of the street smarts, the business smarts. So while I had the street smarts working in a previous career in law enforcement, coming into business was a slightly different environment. And so there was other things that I had to learn to watch for. And was I taken advantage of in some cases? Yes, I was. We hopefully learned pretty quickly from those places to be a little bit more discerning. But also, anytime you invest money, you need to be prepared to lose it. That's part of the process. That's why we need to be careful of the funds of the business, and how we're growing and expanding and scaling the business, and how we're investing. And I loved what you were saying, Moreno, about the video testimonials, how important those are. So listen, we have a beautiful advantage here on LinkedIn, is that while people can give us recommendations, we can reach out to those individuals and have a face-to-face conversation with them and say, look, was that a truthful testimonial? What can you tell me about this owner? We can still do our due diligence and check in and say, what have you got in the way of referrals? What have you done? Testing products and services in advance, getting a feel about what people can expect, knowing that there's still legislation in place that when you invest in something, you have legally a time frame to get your money back. So you want to be aware of those things. Those are important. But really, too, this comes down to really leveraging the opportunity to leverage your brain and being present, learning to focus, being present so that you can see what's going on around you. You can properly assess and gauge what's going on around you. And then because of that, you will be less likely to sabotaging your own performance and how you do things and how you engage with other people. And you are less likely to be sabotaged by other people in your business or organization or from outside of your company.
You said something very interesting, Deborah. Trust your instincts. And there is a difference between instincts and emotion. Yes, first of all, we need to do our due diligence, conduct our cold, hard analysis. But the part that is most accurate are your instincts that come from here. Have you noticed that sometimes you meet someone or you're presented with something and it makes logical sense? It looks good. It sounds good. However, it doesn't feel right and you can't explain why. And it is always right. So first, trust your instincts, as you said, and then the cold facts. We mentioned emotion. We all make our final decisions based on our emotions. I'm just wondering what the overlap or the correlation there is with instincts. I know from experience and those of others that instincts are always correct. So we need to believe in ourselves, trust our instincts, because they never fail us. And those instincts become stronger and clearer when we are confident, when we understand and believe in ourselves. That is the best way to make a decision, to be confident and pay attention to our instincts, Deborah.
No, I would 100% agree. And so what happens is we get these little voices in our head, right? They're in our gut, they're in our kind of our heart, in our head. We hear this little voice, but we ignore it. And we tend to brush it aside. And it's kind of like, something's going on here, but you tend to dismiss it and you're overrided by all the emotions that can take place. And we think the emotions are truth, when in fact, emotions are very fleeting. And especially if they're negative emotions, we're not engaging the right side of the brain. We're not engaging the prefrontal cortex of the brain when we're in full-on negativity. And so we can't think clearly. We can't plan, organize. We're not very good at innovating or navigating a situation or a problem very well. The whole idea is to train your brain so that if you're under a stressful situation and you need to make a good sound decision, you want to take some actions to move forward, you need to learn to engage the right side of the brain so that you're self-commanding and you could do it within seconds. And that is a way of training the brain. And there is science, the latest neuroscience around that has proven that after 6 to 8 weeks of doing very specific mental fitness muscles, we increase the gray matter on the right side of the brain in the prefrontal cortex, and the limbic system, which is where fear resides, negative emotions and fear resides, the gray matter is reduced or atrophied in that area. So the science around this is stunning. And the ability for people to be significantly more discerning and being able to make tough decisions with more ease and grace is possible.
all these methods and tactics that you're referring to help us to strengthen our instincts that come from within. And it helps us to better control our emotions when our emotions are a result of external stimuli that attack us and influence us. So with these mental exercises, we are more grounded, we have better vision, a better understanding, and the instincts become clear. And only then, when we are absolutely sure of something that we want to do, that we want to invest in, only then should we proceed and make the investment. But until that time, when there is that level of uncertainty, which our emotion is responsible for, hold back until you are absolutely sure that the decision that you are about to make is the correct one. You will feel it. You will know when it's correct.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Deborah, that's all I have to say. Is there a final word from you?
You know, Moreno, this was a really good topic, and I think a really important topic for a lot of people to be aware of. What I want to be able to do is share with the audience an opportunity, which we'll include in the chat below the video, an opportunity for them to leverage their brain and to be present and to be highly focused so they could actually develop the right side of their brain, the prefrontal cortex, and be way more effective in their decision making and very much in control of their emotions. So we will share that unique opportunity with the audience in the chat and with a very special link. And thank you, Moreno. Always a great session. Always wonderful to be here with you.
Deborah, thank you for your time and thank you for sharing your experience and know-how. Goodbye until next time.
Bye-bye, everyone.